Hello, and welcome to Comets, Asteroids, and Meteors. We're going to be talking about these celestial bodies, and we're going to be discussing some of the differences between them because they're not actually the same. All right. Comets, right, are loose collections of ice, dust, and rocks, right, that travel across our solar system, right, and their orbits are usually very long and narrow. All right. You can think of a comet as a dirty snowball. I mean, because that's what it is. They're big chunks of ice, and they originate from the outer regions of the solar system, right? The comet is made up of different things. You have the comet's head, right? When a comet gets close to the sun, the energy in the sunlight turns the ice into gas, and it releases gas and releases dust, right? Clouds of gas and dust form a fuzzy outer layer known as a coma. A comet's coma has a solid inner core, it's more solid, called the nucleus. The nucleus and the coma, make up the comet's head. It's the brightest part of the comet. That's the part that we see when we look up at comets, right? The tail forms kind of as it approaches the sun. What happens is um, it begins to heat up the comet. So some of the gas and dust begin to stream outward, right? And that's how the tail is formed. The name comet actually comes meaning long-haired star, right, from the Greeks, right? So it's kind of like your long-haired rocking star, right? Your Fabio of, of stars. Most comets have two tails, right? A gas tail and a dust tail. And they both of these tails usually point away from the sun, right, due to the force of the solar wind that's pushing against them, right. A comet's tail can be more than 100 million kilometers long. Okay, here you see a picture of the one of comet's orbits, right. So the tail gets longer as it gets closer to the sun, right. And again, the gas is always, and dust is always pushed back, right? And that's why you always see the tail going away from the sun. Um, these, like everything else on our solar system, they have to conform to the laws of gravity, right? And we know then that the sun, being the largest, the most massive object on our system, will be then drawing everything rotates around it, right. So where's the origin of the comets? Where do the comets come from? Well, most comets are found in one of two distant regions of the solar system, right. They're either in the Kuiper belt or the Oort cloud, and we'll discuss both of those places. So they travel here from long distances, right. The Kuiper belt is a donut shaped region that extends from beyond Neptune's orbit to about 100 times the Earth's distance from the Sun. So it's still pretty far out there, right? The Kuiper belt. And indeed, this is also where you could find where you find kind of Pluto around here. And as we discussed earlier, Pluto used to be considered a planet, but we found that there's actually a lot of dwarf planets uh, that that orbit around that area, so it's no longer considered a planet. Um, we You will see that then if these comets are originating from this outer region of the solar system, that's why they take a long time, right? You've heard of Halley's comet. These comets only come around after a certain amount of years because they're they are just going way out there, and they are orbiting way out there, right? Beyond that, you see a little picture now of the Neptune orbit, right? And you see a picture there of the Kuiper belt. Beyond that, and the outer regions, the outer regions of our solar system is what's known as the Oort cloud, right? And it's kind of like a spherical region, right? It forms like a sphere. Think about The whole thing being inside like a round snow globe, right? And this is like the outer shell of it. It's a region of comets that surrounds the solar system out to more than 1,000 times the distance between Pluto and the Sun. So it's way out there. And you have some of these comets originating from way over there, right? So those are comets, all right? Next up, we have asteroids, right? Now, when I was a kid, if you mentioned the word asteroid, of course, I would think of the video game in Atari where your spaceship goes around and shoots asteroids. Yes, it was a fun game, one of those uh, simple games that I used to play as a kid, right? Asteroids are rocky objects in space that are too small and numerous to be considered real planets, right? They're also not spherical, which planets are. Most asteroids revolve around the sun between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, right? There's a region here that is known as the asteroid belt. And some of these are large enough where we've even given them names, right? Here's some of the bigger ones, like Phobos, Eros, Ida, Deimos, Gaspra, Matilde, right? And again, these are just huge rocks, if you could think about them that way, that float around in this particular region. So it is an asteroid when it's floating in the asteroid belt, right? You also have meteoroids. A meteoroid is a chunk of rock or dust in space. So they usually come from comets or asteroids. It's a chunk that's kind of come off of either an asteroid or a comet. Some form when asteroids collide in space, which does happen all the time. Others form when a comet breaks up and creates a cloud of dust that continues to move across the solar system. So this dust then creates uh, pieces that then float around. Okay. Meteors, right? So what is a meteor then? You might ask yourself. Well, a meteoroid, when it enters the Earth's atmosphere, friction within the air creates heat and produces a streak of light in the sky. This is what is known as a meteor. Okay. Now, usually, sometimes what will happen is these will be, um, they would be reduced or this dissolved upon entrance, right? So a meteoroid, which is a chunk of debris that's floating in space, when it enters the atmosphere and creates the streak in the sky that we see like a meteor shower, right? You've heard of those. That is known as a meteor, right? And we have one other thing then, and you could see like sometimes these happen. You might have a lot of them kind of come in a surface, and you get what is known as a meteor shower, right? There is one other thing, that word that you might need to know about, and that is meteorites, right? So again, if the meteor, right, or the meteoroid, as if it's large enough and it goes through, it might not burn completely, right? So once the meteor or meteoroid becomes a meteor, right, and then passes through the atmosphere, but doesn't dissolve, right, and it actually ends up hitting the surface as a smaller rock, these are known as meteorites, the ones that actually hit. And there's a picture of one here then that did some damage to a car over here, right? And this happens all the time, all right? So I hope that helped you understand the difference between these celestial bodies. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mr. Delgado's Science Online, and we'll talk to you later. Bye bye, everyone.